appropriate. It does.
Okay.
So we learned the Ilu Nishmat Avigdor Chayavram Ben Rachalei Mertzvi and Refuah Shlema for Abigail, but I don't remember. If you look it up, please. Okay, we are in chapter 4, and we're on the Mishnah somewhere between number 14 and 17 or 18. It starts with the name of Rabbi Nahorai. Is the name you want to find. Rabbi Nahorai. You have 18. Okay. Okay, and I have 14 also. So what we did last time, actually 2 weeks ago, because last week was fast, is Abigail bat Pesha. Abigail Pesha bat Sarah. What we did 2 weeks ago, because last week was the fast day, was to read the Mishnah and get into the topic of Rasha v'Tovlo, when good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people, because that's the concept that's mentioned in the Mishnah. Talked a little bit about that. We also came to the conclusion that Rabbi Yanai's statement, which is as follows: sorry, not Rabbi Yanai. Sorry, I meant Rabbi Yanai, not Rabbi Nahorai. It's the next Mishnah. Yeah. Sorry, Rabbi Yanai. Like I said, we're in the next Mishnah, Rabbi Yanai. See, but if you'd only pay attention, right? Hi, my name is Zev Shamble. I'll be here on Thursday mornings. I am, yeah. So it's the next Mishnah, Rabbi Yanai. Okay, yeah, it's fine. I'm waiting. Okay. Rabbi Yanai said, "Ein biyadenu lo mishalvata rishayim v'af lo misuvei tzadikim." It is not within our grasp, which I imagine is what it translates as. The fact that rishayim, evil people, live a life of Riley, means that kind of everything's going well for them. And the fact that tzaddikim go through all kinds of trials and tribulations in their lives. That's the statement he made. And we came to the conclusion, at least from our perspective now, that it's not the beginning of a conversation, but it's the end of a conversation that started with Abraham Avinu. We looked at all different ideas within, let me just make sure this is recorded. Yeah. All kinds of different ideas throughout Tanakh and history, where this whole concept, first of all, spoiler alert, like he said, you're never going to resolve it. It's not possible. But we'll see. But the question is why? Why is it not resolvable? Why does it happen? It seems like, it's just not fair, which is the topic we started talking about a little bit last week. So what I'll do today is to look a little bit more about Rabbi Yanai's statement, and then to look at some of the classic commentators and how they approach this. And Bezrat Hashem next week to look at modern day commentaries. So I said it's going to be a few classes going to deal with this whole topic. Obviously, it's going to be a whole series. It could go for years, but it'd be very boring because, like look up in the dictionary circular logic, and it says see logic, circular. You go back to there. It's like it goes around and around and around. Literally, try to explain to somebody what a spiral staircase is without using your hands. Good luck. Why did that pop in my head? I have no idea. Okay. The mission itself seems very simple. The statement that he makes seems very simple. Not simplistic, but simple. That we just don't know why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people. I don't know if any of you ever read Ryan Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. It's actually very, very good. If you had not had a chance to read it, I would recommend it. I read it many years ago. But it's actually a very, very profound, deep statement that he really wants us to know. It's not a theory that he's telling us. It's a statement basically of fact. That is, that this whole question, which we are entitled, he said, to talk about and debate and read and learn and study, so at the end of the day, it's outside our grasp. We will not be able, for example, can you explain why Hashem, I can give you possible reasons, why Hashem created a universe that is so vast, maybe 100 light years, 110 light years across, whatever the number was, 100 million light years across, that no one's ever going to see it, at least as far as we know nowadays. To give you an idea of what that means distance-wise, so I've always loved astronomy and stuff with the stars and the Apollo missions and all that. So the Gemini 7, I think it was 7, Gemini, was sent up in 1977 or 76 to basically go to do a certain exploration and then keep going and going. So Just this morning, I happened to see that it is now getting to the edge of one light day. It's been going in train. Now, that means that light travels 186,000 miles per second. A light year is the amount of distance a light will travel in a year. In 1 second, light travels around the world 25 times. That's what it can go like that, and that's the fast speed of light. Not theoretically, it is mathematically impossible to achieve the speed of light because you need an unlimited amount of energy to do that. So Gemini, which left basically 50 years ago, 50 years ago, approximately, is just now reaching almost in November. In November of this year, it'll reach one light day. Now we're talking the universe is millions of light years across. Numbers that our brains, you could sit here forever. You're never going to figure it out. Okay, why? Okay, so you think it would be 1 million light years less in distance that we would think anything less of God? Like, oh man, he couldn't do 110, 12 million? Come on, God, what's the matter? You know. And the universe is expanding, continues to expand ever since. Well, it could have been the Big Bang. You know, that could work with Judaism. Could be, because one factor that scientists who believe that leave out is like, where did the material come from for that Big Bang? So who knows? But it's also a disappointing statement. It really is when you think about it. Oh, outside our grasp. No, we don't know. When someone said, you know, why did God create human beings? Why did God create the world? These are meta questions, not just in Judaism, but in life, where the person believes in God, how we believe, or just in anything. Why was the world created? And you can go on and philosophize. And if God doesn't need anything, why did he have to create the world? Da, 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 da. Tachlis, there's no real good answer. But that doesn't mean we don't keep Torah mitzvot. Doesn't mean we don't believe in Hashem. But we have to be left the fact. We have to understand that there are question marks in life. And by the way, it's important that when children and grandchildren ask questions that are beyond our grasp. Recently, somehow, two of my granddaughters got into the Saba. Why did Hashem create ants? Why did Hashem create spiders? Actually, there's answers to these. But why did Hashem create lions? Specific, like why grass? So one thing I was proactive and told them what we've talked about here was why there's, with the exception maybe of one thing, nothing in the universe was created square. It's round or flat. Majority of things created are round. There's nothing in nature. There's nothing square. Yonatan Raziel brought me once a mineral from the Dead Sea that evidently is supposed to be the only thing. I think it's the Dead Sea area. That's the only thing that's square naturally. It's literally a cube. That's what I thought, but it wasn't. It wasn't the salt crystal. It was something else. I don't know exactly what it was. I had it for a while. You could take a look, but it wasn't the salt crystal, to the best of my recollection. So why round? You know, the planets are round, the stars are round, the sun is round, and everything's round, right? Your eyes, your nose, things are round because it's a message to us. A cube, I could put on the table and sit there forever. Doesn't have to move, doesn't have to evolve, doesn't have to grow, just sits. Round moves, there's motion. That's part of what we are. Besides the fact that the solar system, which is about a tiny speck of a tiny speck of a tiny speck of an infinitesimal speck of the universe, it's always moving, it's always growing, and that's what we're supposed to do. What'd you find? No, nothing yet. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No, it's fine. Okay. But he says really that this is a mystery that's beyond us. So what's Rabbi Yanni really teaching us, though? He's teaching us something, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, that Rashi teaches. When Rashi says, I don't know, he's teaching us humility. We have to be able to say, like I said before, to our kids, to our grandchildren, to our neighbors, to ourselves, we don't know. But that's the way Hashem created the world, or that's the way Hashem did this, or that's why Hashem did that. We always have to make sure we understand that it's part of Hashem's grand plan. But there's also a very big difference between saying there is no answer, between saying it's beyond us. If we say the whole issue of Sadiq Varalo, that when bad things happen to good people, there's no answer to that. That's false. That's not true. Of course there's an answer, but it's beyond us. What you find? I'll look at it after. Thank you. Huh? Halite, that might be it. Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay. Thank you. So the Mishne is telling us, first of all, let's understand, why is it not fair? Why is it that, it's a rhetorical question, why is it that when bad things happen to good people or good things happen to bad people, that's unfair because we have an internal a set of rules and justice, right? The guy's a schnook. He cheats everybody in business. Now look, he's a multimillionaire and his name's on 25 buildings, right? And then he ends up in jail after that. But why is that? Or the guy's the biggest tzaddik I've ever met in my life. And he has two shekels to rub together. Poor guy. And he tries and he works. It's not some schnorr that stands out his hand out. He really tries. Or she's a tzaddik. It's like, what the heck? Because it goes against our nature. We're created from by Hashem with having a sense of justice. And there's rules in this world that we have to live by. And it seems almost on the surface, Hashem doesn't live by the rules. It seems that way. We are incapable of seeing the answer because of multiple reasons. Number one, we only see fragments. We don't see the whole picture. I'm going to come back to that in a little while, specifically with maybe the Ramban or Rabbi Yosef Alba. We'll see. We also only see, think about the fact, let's assume for a moment that the earth is only 5,786 years old. Let's assume that for a moment, putting away science and everything else. It says it's multi-millions, and it's easy to reconcile that too. First 4 days of creation, there is no sun, there is no moon until the sun and moon are created. Let's say the sun is created the fourth day. It says it was evening, it was morning. How? How long was the day? Who said it was 24 hours? We know it's 24 hours now. So maybe until Adam HaRishon was created on Friday afternoon. Could have been a million years each, what we call years. Who knows? Anyway, so let's assume it's 5,786 years old. How much of that 5,786 years does the average person really get to observe? If you're lucky, Bezrat Hashem, it's at least your 90s, let's say. Nowadays, with science, with medical gains. Okay, so 90 years. That's great. What's the percentage? 90 divided by 5,786 is a tiny 0.000 something. So we only see a tiny bit. Not only does God see 5,786 years, he sees eternity. Before there was an earth, what was there? Was there time? God's beyond time, but what was there? What was in the place that the earth exists now? And these things should make your head explode, right? That's why don't spend too much time trying to think about them. In addition to that, we judge individual events. This guy is no good, right? I'm not pointing at you, Mark. This guy is no good. I might be looking sideways at you. I'm not pointing at you. He's no good, and yet he prospers. But we don't see the whole picture. I'll give you an example that's partially true, okay? Partially true, that we only see the small picture. Last night I had the opportunity, my wife and I had the opportunity, we went to Shalim, we went out with some friends, two from Chicago, a couple of my great, strongest friends, grew up with literally since kindergarten, and another couple who lives in Israel for a very long time, but also originally from Chicago. Finished, it was very nice, it was a great evening, it was nice and cool in Yerushalayim, walked to the light rail, get on, and it just sits. And I know right away what's going on. And they say, because of the variety and the content later on, we don't go towards Givat HaChosh, we're only going back the other way. And we were at Al-Baladiyah. So at first, and we had just been talking about this at the table, the whole Shesa, the split in the country right now with Haredi, anti-Haredi, Dati Lumi, serving, don't serve it. And we all have our own individual opinions, as strong as they might be. And at first, I was like, oh, come on, again with this stupidity, what are they doing? They just disrupt lives. And it wasn't out of anger. It was just like rhetorically to myself. And then finally I said to Anne, I said, oh, we're going to get home exactly when we're supposed to. So, and she looked like, oh, right. Meaning we ended up going back to Tachane Merkazit, took a 174, actually 177, let's make a difference in the details. But why am I telling you this? Because whatever I did, whoever I may have interacted with on that bus or those two buses, whatever time I got into bed or whatever I did before, all changed. It was part of God's plan. We don't see that. Why did Hashem want me to go to bed at 11:15 instead of 10:30? Whatever, I'm making up a number, right? I don't know, but there was a reason for it. So we only see this little, okay, so what I'd like to connect this with we are all old enough to remember that when there were no computers, right? Before computers, there was something called the word processor. Word processor basically was a typewriter that had a little electronic window that you could see a few characters of what you just typed. If you make a mistake, tough luck, Charlie. So it was the Smith Corona XD. And the guy I worked for many years, before I was in businesses, I worked for a manufacturer for 17 years. Guy was in Tzaddik, who I worked for. He loved technology. I never heard the word fax machine before him. And he was the first person, our company's the first person I ever knew that had a fax machine. I felt like Alexander Graham Bell with the first telephone. Who are you going to call? Besides Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? So he said, we have a fax machine. Yeah, who am I fax? No one knows what a fax machine is. We went from asking companies, do you have a fax machine, to what's your fax number? Right, okay, it evolved. So he saw this new thing called a word processor. And he bought it, and he asked me for some reason. He thought I was the tech guy. Suddenly I became the tech guy. Here, I want you to learn how to use this. So it became very frustrating. It was cool that you could actually type something, and words weren't on paper. They were saved somehow in some electronic thing. That was the way cool thing. But what did you see? If I want to say, dear Mr. Smith, I hope you're doing well. Wanted to follow up with you on that purchase order in 97. And all I said was, dear Mr. Smith, that's what I saw on the screen, right? That little window that was going by. That's what we see. That's what we see in this world. We see that teeny little peak. Meitzitz is Pasuk in Shir Shirim says, Meitzitz min hacharakim. He's peeking out from the crags. And that's what we see. We don't see the whole picture. If you come up, I've used this example 1,000 times. I heard it many years ago, and it's really good. If you walk into a room, you see someone cutting somebody's arm off, what would you do? Most people say, I'd scream, I'd call the police. I said, well, what if it actually was an operating room? They're amputating an arm to save his life. We don't know the facts. I didn't give you all the facts. Here's a great one. 4 cars come to a stop at the same time at an intersection. Who has the right of way? Person to your right. That's the general rule, right? Now, did I say they were 1, 2, 3, 4? No. You in your mind pictured 1, 2, 3, 4. I meant in my head 1, 2, 3, 4. The right of way is the first car. Otherwise, they're going to have an accident, right? So we put our biases in our back. We make assumptions. We fill in the blanks. Hashem has all of the blanks filled in for us, right? So that's part of the problem as well. So the Gemara in Masachet Brachot, which I quoted, I don't like saying which I quoted a couple weeks ago, talked about the idea, which is really the first time, as far as I know, in the Talmud, it discusses the idea of Rasha v'Tovlo. It said, why? This is when Moshe Rabbeinu is hiding behind in the mountain, and he says the Harini Nakvodecha in the cave. Actually, I think in English it's a crag in the mountain that he's hiding in. V'nikrat Hatzur is the word. Tzur is a rock. It's the only physical thing Hashem is called. We say Tzur Yisrael. We don't call him anything else. The Rock of Israel. And so when it says, show me your glory, Gemara says that what he's really asking is, why is it tzaddik v'ralo v'shat tovlo? So Gemara expands a little bit on this and says, Amar lo, so Hashem said to him, to Moshe, tzaddik v'tovlo, a tzaddik, when things go well for him, tzaddik ben tzaddik, is a person who is a tzaddik, who also comes from a lineage of tzaddikim. Now, take this with a grain of salt, or a whole pound of salt at this point. Tzaddik v'ralo, and a tzaddik, things go poorly, is a tzaddik ben rasha. Is a tzaddik who's a tzaddik, but their lineage is pagum. There's problems with it. It comes from Rishaim. Rasha v'tovlo, when you see someone evil, things going well, is a rasha ben tzaddik. He has some zchuyot. He came from tzaddikim, but now he's a rasha. And vice versa, rasha ben rasha, when things go bad for a bad guy. So there are these distinctions that are made in the Gemara. These are partial answers. There's no, again, I said this a couple weeks ago. If you really, really want to get into depth in this, you have to learn, I forgot Pirke. In Tanya, when he really talks about this, it's the first part of Tanya discusses it a lot, partially directly and partially indirectly. But there is no formula that will really resolve this complexity. It won't. And we'll make it even more important, complex and developmentally challenged, for lack of a better term. And that is as follows. The Gemara in Kiddushin, it says as follows. Schar b'hai alma leka. There is no such thing as reward in this world for doing a schar mitzvah b'hai alma leka. There is no reward in this world for doing mitzvot. Really? We say it in Shema that there is, right? You're going to live longer on the earth. Doesn't mean, by the way, in China or United States, it means Israel. So you get a little longer here. Because Hashem promised this land. This is the land where we get to live longer. Life expectancy, Baruch Hashem, in Israel is much higher for say males and females than it is in many parts of the world. Which state has in the United States? Which state has the highest life expectancy? Little known fact. Not Utah. What? In the United States, which state has the highest level of life expectancy? It should be pretty obvious when you hear the answer. You understand. You're close. No, Hawaii. Laid back, hang loose, right? Hang loose, Hawaii. What's that? Grapefruit, yeah, that too. I'm sure. Having been there a few times, I can tell you it is beautiful. It is very relaxing. Life moves at an interesting pace. But I actually had the opportunity to potentially years ago move there to actually become a mashgiach tmidi at a hotel and stuff, and thought about it for a day. Just like the amount of it was actually less than I thought about going into politics. I thought about that for a few weeks, many years ago. Has to have the best coffee. Well, Kona coffee. That's right. Absolutely. And macadamia nuts. Okay. Let's come back to this world. Okay. So what does that mean? That there is no reward? If a person serves Hashem faithfully, we all do our best. No one's perfect, but we all try to do our best. Why shouldn't he prosper? Why shouldn't we get something for that? And if a wicked person rebels, why doesn't he suffer, or she? Chazal, Chachamenu Zichronam Lebracha, rabbis challenge that assumption. They challenge that assumption, which is what our instinct should be. The world is not the primary arena of reward and punishment. We think about this world, but we will see very soon, I don't remember, it's the next Mishne or a couple coming up, it says that we should look at this world as being a prosdor, a hallway, to get to the traklin, which is the great hall. Prepare yourself in the hallway to get to the great hall, which is a metaphor for this world and the next world. We, of course, as human beings, living human beings, think about this world and what's going on around us. We don't necessarily take into account that there's a world where I don't want to say our, because Mashiach is coming, but the neshamot of those who passed away, they're going to go and go. It's going to be a long, long time that once a person passes away, they're dead for a long time, right? Until Tchiyat HaMeitim. And my daughter asked me when she was my oldest, when she was about 9, she asked me, because my wife's father, my never really was my father, passed away when he was just 50 years old. And my mother-in-law remarried somebody who they were married for many years, and he passed away. So, but while he was still alive, my daughter asked me, Daddy, when Tchiyat HaMeitim comes, who's Bobby going to live with? I said, you want me to tell you who I think she should live with? So Ed wasn't the rabbi of the shul. Remember, I was the rabbi of the shul I grew up in. So I was davening in the shul, but I eventually became the rabbi. So we went to the rabbi. Very nice guy. Very, very smart. Great answer. And it actually probably is what influenced me in some of these kind of discussions. He said, Danielle, there are just some questions we don't know the answers to until they happen. I thought it was a great answer. He can't say definitively. Actually, there is an answer, I believe. But because it all relates to when a person passes away, when a person loses their spouse, is that a nituk? Is it like the equivalent, so to speak, quote of a get? Or is it more, it's a spiritual thing. It's obviously not a physical thing. So are they still connected? They're not connected halachically. I'm not talking about spiritual. Of course they are. But in any case, this is what we're talking about. It's like, who's that person going to live with? I don't know. There's also throw another piece in there. What's called, which we talked about many times here, Yisurim Shel Ahava, which are trials and tribulations that people go through that Hashem gives them out of love. Imagine, God forbid, a parent comes up to you and smash you across the face. That's because I love you. Really? And it's abuse. Tough love. So that's not what it means. It's not what Yisur Shalavav. If a person is, I don't know why this image popped in my head, but let's say a shoemaker, a horseshoe maker. Person makes horseshoes, a blacksmith. Takes raw material and he takes it and he puts it in the hot fire, and he takes his hammer and he starts hammering and hammering and hammering. Is he doing it because he's mad at the material? Is he doing it because he is, he's getting his anger out or something? Is he doing it because no, because he wants to perfect that which is there. So in a sense, we go through things in this world to perfect us, to help us go through things. And it's because Hashem loves us. There are times, wait a minute, there are things that seem to happen that like the farthest thing possibly from love. We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay. But we also have to come, like I said, with that whole idea of Yisur Shalava, we have to come with a lot of caution. You can't just say, oh, something happened. There are people who, as soon as anything happens bad in their life, think, God did this to me, and I'm supposed to learn a lesson from it, which is depending on or I did something wrong, and I'm getting punished for it. I don't like going through life like that. I really don't. I don't like going through life like that. I like to look at positive, and we're going to see what that really means in a couple of minutes. Don't ever assume suffering indicates guilt, because it's not a good approach. It's not a healthy approach, neither physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, philosophically, Jewishly, none of that stuff. And we're going to see why when we talk about a couple of these commentaries in a moment. But Rabbi Yanai's statement, which we're going to go back to for a second, is interesting because if you look at the order he places this in, it says, we don't know why the good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good. Wouldn't you want to put the tzaddikim first? Like, we don't understand why bad things happen to good people. That's even more problematic in my mind than good things happen to bad people. So why does he put it in that particular? Why begin with the prosperity of the wicked? Because possibly, doesn't mean for sure. What's more spiritually, let's talk spiritually for a second. Gut reaction. You have two people. I present two people here. This guy is a ganef. He embezzles. He's worth millions. And again, he's got his name on all these buildings. He's prosperous, and people bow down and kiss his feet and genuflect at the altar of the dollar. And over here, you got a guy, perfectly nice guy, keeps to himself. He was a quiet guy, kept himself into them. And they always are. The quiet guy kept it himself. That's why I try to make a lot of noise. So he's a nice guy. He learns. He davens. He says Kriyat Shema Lamita. He says Tikun Chatzot. And never he can't catch a break. This happens bad to this head. Which one, in a gut visceral reaction, do you say is more difficult to swallow? For most people, I asked this question. Most people, it's the first. The fact that this guy is so antithetical to what I believe in, and yet he's still prospering, and that's why, potentially, why Rabbi Yanai starts with that statement, because it's more destabilizing in our system. Remember, we're talking about justice. That's the general topic here, is justice. And that seems to go against the grain even more than the good guy who has things back. It shakes our faith maybe even more than when we not more. It could shake our faith more in a situation where a person is bad and good things are happening versus the bad happening to the good person. Even Yirmiyahu himself, Yirmiyahu Navi, which I quoted a couple of weeks ago, he said, Madua derech Rishayim tzlecha. Why is it? He doesn't say, why do bad things happen to good people? He says, why do good things happen to Rishayim, to evil people? Again, it seems to be a protest against apparent injustice. So we're going to talk about a few ideas and different commentaries of how they approached this whole question. We'll start with the Maharal. The Maharal challenges one of our assumptions. The Maharal challenged the assumption that material success reflects spiritual worth. Many people believe and I understand where it comes from, that the better person you are, then the better life you should have. You should have better possessions, you'd have a better life. According to Maharal, it's a fundamental mistake. He says as follows. I wrote down in English what he said. I translate following statements. I have it read and underlined. So that means it means something, I guess. Material prosperity belongs to one system of reality. Spiritual greatness belongs to another. They're two different realms. Belongs to another, meaning they're two different worlds. Material prosperity and spiritual greatness. There are two different realms, two different worlds. A person can possess wealth, power, prestige, money, and still remain spiritually impoverished. Plenty of people in this world are like that. We could nominate many of them, more than a few. On the other hand, we could find many people who endure all kinds of hardships in their life, but who stand exceptionally close to Hashem. That there we would say, boy, that person's true tzaddik, whatever that means in our own minds, tzaddik. Once we separate material success from the spiritual value, we don't make that connection, then part of the contradiction starts to dissolve. Because at that point, what happens is, and again, there's no resolution. I'm just saying it starts to dissolve, is that we're saying he kept Torah mitzvot, therefore X, he should have X. But there is no therefore. It's like saying, I walked to the store and therefore someone colored with a blue marker on the board in school. There's no connection. If you ever learned, I was not a good student in math, but there is a branch of mathematics called probability. So in probability, which I took a course in college, there's the famous expression, if P then Q, which discusses causation. Like if I throw a cup of water in someone's face, they will get wet. If P happens, Q is the result. So in any case, that's how we look at things. This guy is doing such a bad guy over here, such a bad guy. And yet he has X. Well, they're not connected. That's what Maharal's approach is. Ultimately, Rabbi Yanni refuses to claim any kind of victory in this kind of battle. What's going to be, which way is the right way. And he concludes with this idea of humility. As I said, the mystery remains. But let's take a look even further back to the Maharal. Some medieval thinkers who try to do at least the best they can. By the way, it's important to understand. You might think like, why do these philosophers and why do we spend time on this topic when there is an answer, but we won't be able to figure it out. So why do we do it? Why do we spin our wheels in the sense of it sounds like we're doing? Because it's still part of our Torah mind, our Torah lives. We have to start off with the assumption it's beyond our grasp, but at the same time doesn't say that we're exempt from. It says we did the Mishne already. I think I don't remember what Pirke it is. Lo alecha melcha ligmor. It's not upon you to be able to finish the work. Something libatel mimena, but you're not allowed to say you're exempt from it. I don't understand why we have to wear tzitzit. I don't understand why I have to wear tefillin. I don't understand it, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, it's beyond our comprehension. Well, because it represents this. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I don't understand it. So I've had the discussion, I've said this before, with people who say, I don't understand it, therefore I don't do it. I said, why do you plug your phone in to charge it then? So otherwise it's dead. I said, so what? Do you understand electricity? No. So why do you do it? Because I have to. Otherwise I don't have a phone. Oh, so you do things that you don't understand. Oh, even though there is a reason, I guess. So in any case, each one of these people we're going to discuss, whether Ramban or Rambam or others, each comes from a starting point, and that's two fundamental truths. God's justice is perfect. And number two, human experience seems to often be inconsistent with that justice. Meaning, we have to, what is it we're trying to reconcile? That's the bottom line. Try to reconcile the fact that we believe Hatzur Tamim Paulo, Hashem's justice is perfect. Hashem is tzaddik. Hashem is righteous, using our terminology. We'll start with the Ramban. He has a unique approach. Rambam, a unique approach, which he puts into Moreh Nevuchim, the guide for the perplexed. He said that much of what we refer to as evil is not directly imposed by Hashem at all. What does that mean? When I say bad things, not evil people, but bad things, is not imposed by God. Suffering sometimes comes from natural consequences of the way Hashem put the world into motion. Or there's actions of other people. there are people's own mistakes. Now, what's the Rambam saying? It's this extremely radical statement. What's he saying? We're used to thinking that if there is a tornado, God forbid someone gets killed, that was their time. It was Hashem's will at that moment. Rambam's telling us that's not necessarily always true. Hashem put certain laws into nature. Things happen, whether it's tornadoes and tsunamis, hurricanes. I'm sure you had your fair share of hurricanes in Florida. Never had one in Chicago. We did have tornadoes. A couple tornadoes we had. Really? Wow. So these natural acts of what are called acts of God, meaning that they're nature acts, isn't necessarily Hashem saying, yeah, you needed to die today, you need to die, you need to get a broken leg. Maybe. Rambam says that's not necessarily accurate. That's a very radical statement because people often assume any tragedy, any bad thing that happens, or any difficulties that we go through is a direct heavenly decree. Rambam says, hold your horses there, buddy. Not necessarily so. By the way, obviously, it shouldn't be obvious, but it is to me. Not everyone agrees with that. Okay, I can give you. I'm not going to do it now, but give you 100 different citations. That's a bit of exaggeration. Okay, 99 that say the opposite. They say you don't even raise your little finger doesn't get hurt unless it's nigzar min hashamayim. If Hashem decrees that your little baby pinky is going to get injured, that's all min hashamayim. All different statements. So how does Rambam say what he does? He's the Rambam. He's allowed to say, yeah. Very good. So that's one of the things he said. It's a matter of a person behaving badly. If I go over and I punch someone in the face, is that Hashem telling me to do that? The answer is no. That's my free choice. But if you take the Rambam out of the picture for a second, that person was supposed to get injured at that moment. But it didn't have to be from me. Hashem has many messengers. Could have happened another way. He could have tripped on a stone and hit his face. Whatever it is. But I chose to do that. Because if not, you throw the whole system of legal system out the window. Because if I punch somebody and I owe him 5 different things, and Nezek, all the damage and lost wages and everything else, I could just say, what are you looking at me for? That was God's will. What do you mean I pay you? So from my perspective, it was my free will. From his perspective, it was what was meant to happen. So again, there's another thing the Rambam himself says, don't try to reconcile it. You go out of your mind. And almost literally says it like that. The Rambam says we have to also be careful about the assumption. Again, I'm only giving the Rambam's opinion right now. The assumption that every single thing happens because Hashem wants it to happen to every single person. Because a person who behaves recklessly may have to suffer the consequences of his actions. A person drinks too much and gets behind the wheel of a car, God forbid, and crashes. They did it to themselves. It was their free will that let them drink. It was their free will. No, it wasn't necessarily free will, but they got into the car. I say it's not necessary because they're not thinking straight at that moment, and they crashed and got injured. But at the same time, yes, that. No, I didn't say it was an alcoholic. I said a guy got drunk. Getting drunk doesn't make a person an alcoholic. Alcoholic means, by definition, a person who has to have a drink at a certain frequency. If a person, I actually heard Rabbi Torskill of a show, I think I've heard it from him. He says, if a person has to have a drink every Shabbat, I was thinking, I don't know, but every Shabbat, they absolutely have to have that drink. He says they almost can fall into the category. It doesn't mean that what we determine as an alcoholic, but a person who has a connection to alcohol. I mean, my once every 25 years to have a shot is probably because it's every 25 years, right? And I got another few years to go until I get to this third drink. So, but in any case, I don't want to get sidetracked on this though. But there are also a fact that societies that embrace violence. What does it mean they embrace violence? I'm going to give you what time is it now? Good, I have 5 minutes though. So I'm going to explain what this is, and I'm going to come back to this next week. Bezrat Hashem. What does it mean a community embraces violence? This, by the way, is literally a 45-minute talk. I'm going to give it 3 minutes. Irmiklat. When a person would kill someone by accident, at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there would be cities of refuge that a person would be able to run to protect himself, that the next of kin of the murdered, the manslaughtered individual doesn't go and kill him. Okay, you protect yourself in the Irmiklat. 3 were in Aver HaYarden, Transjordan, 3 in the land of Israel, plus all 42 cities of the Leviim. The Levites' cities were also considered Arei Miklat, had all kinds of rules and regulations, and We talked about it when we talked about Galut a few weeks ago, because it's also called Galut, exile. There were all kinds of signs around the country that said Miklat. Not the kind we have today, but same word, Miklat. Okay, that would indicate to a person who had killed someone by accident that he could just run to such and such a place, follow the signs, and he gets the Ir Miklat. Okay. Clear? That's Aleph. Bet. When people would bring bikurim, that's the first fruit of the 7 species grown anywhere in Israel, most places in Israel, they'd have to bring the first fruits to the city of Yerushalayim, bring to the Beit HaMikdash, and to the Kohanim. There were no signs that said Yerushalayim. How'd they find their way? So they had to ask. They go from here city to this city. How do you get? No, take Route 1. It was no Route 1. But I would say route anyways, but I had to say route because I'm here. Say Route 1, and you go down here, you make a left, and then get there. Say, where am I supposed to go? Oh, didn't you put into Waze? Waze wasn't invented yet. Oh, right. So they eventually find their way. Why? Why are there 2 different approaches? One, you tell somebody the accidental murder, you tell them, go straight away, and here's how you find, and here you make them ask. Part 3. It says in the Gemara, I forgot which one, that they set up these different Arei Miklat pretty much equidistant north to south, east to west, so that wherever a person was in the country, they had a place to run. True on the other side of the Jordan and on this side of the Jordan. Gemara asked, wait a second, why is it that you needed 3 on the other side of the Jordan? Maybe 1, because the majority of the population was here. He says, because it was very common, murder was common in the other side of the Jordan. And what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Who cares that murder is common? Besides which, murder, you don't go to the Ir Miklat for murder. You go there when you killed by accident. So now we're going to answer this, put it all together. When a person was bringing bikurim, Hashem wanted the individual to come in contact with people and ask, which way is Yerushalayim? Say, whoa, what are you going to Yerushalayim? Oh, I'm bringing bikurim. Oh, Mazel Tov, Shkoyach. Oh, that's right, I should be my bikurim. They wanted the people to come in contact, even for a brief moment, asking directions. On the other side, Hashem said, you killed by accident? Look, it wasn't on purpose. But even the fact that you killed somebody, I don't want you coming in contact with anybody that shouldn't rub off, so to speak, and to the other people. So therefore, we want to say, here's your signs. Here's how you're going to get there. So why does the Gemara say the shchichi rotzchim, that murder was common in the Aver HaYarden, and therefore they needed all 3 of these, even though it wasn't, you don't go to Ir Miklat for murder, because you grew up, you were living in a society, that's exactly what I was talking about, that murder was commonplace. So even killing by accident became, not such a big deal. So therefore, they need to have 3 Arei Miklat. So this is a kind of talk you give 45 minutes before Elul. It's like you make a whole shear out of it and how you come into contact, know who your neighbors are, know who your friends are, know who your blah, 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 blah. But that's what the Rambam's telling us also here. Sometimes it's not, Min Hashemayim nigzar, and Hashem decreed this is going to happen. You're a victim of circumstances. And you are in your community, or you are in your whatever it is, and the people you work with, and the people you associate with, and sometimes they have an effect on you, and that's not necessarily nigzar min hashamayim. That's why it says you have to be careful. Nebuch, you live next to a Russia, it's great. You live next to a tzaddik, and all the kind of wonderful things. So that was. I have more on the Rambam and the Ramban and a few others, and then we'll come to modern times, Bezrat Hashem, next week. I'll breathe. And have a good day and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.